Hey guys, how's it going? I'm the Duke of Italy, favorite lo-fi music YouTuber. You haven't seen the shooting location in a while, and that's because I'm only using it once because I'm going back to the other one in a few days. But today's the last classic review of the year, and it's 1:40 at the time I'm recording this, but I considered going to bed. You see, I'm tired. Merry Christmas, by the way. It's Christmas when I'm recording this. Well, not anymore. I considered going to bed. I was like, that's what's good for me. But then I thought this album deserves something brown, something greasy, something kind of hard to look at, something a little pathetic. And it's me going to send out a video seen by maximum 30 people. Recorded at before 2 in the morning. It's certainly morning. Of course, we're talking about Ween's The Pod. Now, this is not anyone's favorite Ween album. If it is, I mean, you're based for that, honestly. But it's one of my favorites. Because it's not at all like Quebec. Quebec is my favorite. Quebec is good production. It's funny. It's still got the brown moments. For those of you who don't know, brown is like an adjective used for like, oh, it's good because it's bad. That's like Ween's term, the band Ween. So The Pod is a concept album about New Jersey, basically. Not like specifically said by that, but the title of the pod, refers to Ween's apartment that they lived in and recorded this whole thing. This mess of an amazing album. There are very few albums as charming as this one. Not because of, like, effort, necessarily. I mean, there's a lot of effort in this, but, like, it's just one of the dumbest albums I've ever heard. And there are bits on this album that go into every single Ween album, like, especially into the Mollusk. Probably some more punky bits from God Ween Satan. Some country bits, a little bit. The most avant-garde bits they have are on this album, and I mean that. It's a lot of weirdness. But I wanted to cover this album because, in a way, you could easily give it like a 4 out of 10, a 5 out of 10, or a 6 out of 10. But I'm going to give it something much higher today because thinking about the artistry of this album and how ballsy it is at points and kind of revolutionary for Ween. It's a classic. I'm totally stretching the definition of classic here today. Like, none of my viewers are going to be like, dude, when is Duke of Italy going to review The Pod by Ween? Not that anyone ever asked that, ever. I think I've had maybe like 2 people ever want me to talk about anything. But today we're talking about The Pod. So this is Ween's second album, and I wanted to cover it because it's so unique in feeling. It's literally unnecessarily long. It's nearly an hour and 20 minutes. It's like over 20 songs. Every song is like under 5 minutes, so they're all kind of short. And they are all, it's like literally taking Quaaludes, this album. It will numb you to the weirdest degree. But it ties so much into this album because this album follows different characters and different themes, and it's actually surprisingly well-rounded. Like, it's sort of bookended by the Stallion, and you got these big drug trip ideas of Quaaludes and heroin and LSD and a weed dealer at one point. But let me just get into the track list so I can look at my notes here, because the time of me being awake is fleeting. We start off with the iconic Strap on That Jammy Pack. Sort of like this and the next like few tracks before the Stallion Part One are sort of like it's like a little taster. It's an appetizer for the album, I want to say. And I like using crude language when talking about The Pod because it's what Ween would want. So get ready for a no music theory episode. I actually can't promise that at all. Maybe there will be a little bit. But this song is one of the weirdest on the album, straight up. But its concept is so stupid. It's very entertaining. It's literally like the ending to a song played for 3 minutes, where it's just like strumming the same note, and the drum is just like shh, and it's gonna end, and then it repeats a few times, and you realize, oh, that's the instrumental for the song. It's this weird Vegas-y, big, grandiose ending in this disgustingly lo-fi recording quality. By the way, this album is beyond lo-fi. And then you got this dude over the top going, strap on that jammy pack, and he's singing about the stuff that you can't hear what he's saying, but it's like, I don't know, the feeling I got was it was like, welcome to the dinner party, get off the floor, have a drink of this. I'm assuming this starts it off with Moonshine for the album's drugs. Feels like a Quaalude, but it's just like, drink some of this and you're in the album. It is utterly ridiculous, but like once you start catching on to what the song is doing, it's hilarious. Next is the song Dr. Rock, which speeds it up a little bit, and this is when we get our first hit of the drum machine of the album. Some utterly ridiculous textures on this thing. None of them are like good in an objective sense. Some of them are very creative later on, but this right here, it's just like this like super silly like drum machine sound. It's this like fuzzy weird punk song where you've got this crazy fun like dichotomy between like ultra hippie stoner like singing about some weird magic stuff, and then you got the dude who's just on, gosh, the dude who just like, I don't know, drank his own prison hooch, and he's just Dr. Rock at the end of every like refrain, I want to say. But like, it sounds stupid, right? It sounds stupid, but it's so hooky, it's so effective that I'm like bobbing my head to this disgusting sound. But he's just singing out the weirdest stuff, and then it's Dr. Rock, and you're like, yeah, let's go. And the lyrics are very abstract. They cover just about every theme you could think of. As good as the song is, it's actually this dual guitar solo towards the end that really brings it on home. The guitar work on Ween songs is normally pretty good, but you actually notice one of the guitars is not a guitar at all. I was like, oh, that extended note's pretty nice there. It's the distorted vocals just going ah, and it's actually kind of creative. It's probably one of the most creative parts of the song, of the album, rather. Next is the song Frank. It's a slow, lumbering jam with a pretty dreary feel, and it's got like a bluesy singing style behind it, which I use very loosely, and it's the most drony sound. It's just drifting all over the place, and then it extends into these just like guitar drones, just like warping over each other into these different notes, because it's all layered in the weirdest way. Again, you're just on this total descent from the beginning of the album, 3 tracks in, and it's still going. Next is the song Sorry Charlie. It's sort of a country jam that sounds like it's being told over a loudspeaker. Easily the most straightforward song so far, but it doesn't take a hit because it's so straightforward. It tells a pretty clear story. It almost makes me feel like the protagonist of the album is Charlie, and we're hearing this being talked about him. It's this low-life pot dealer in New Jersey, because everything in this album's in New Jersey, and he's just got the saddest existence. It's so sad. And it's just a really gripping song. It's such a weird little track because it really pulls you out of the thing so far. Because like at first you're introduced to the feel of the album, then the protagonist. Because this feels like a concept album to me, like in a really weird roundabout way. But this is a really weird roundabout album. And after this track, we get the Stallion Part One. The Stallion Part One is legendary for many reasons. One, it's got a guy going the Stallion Mang for like the whole song, and the words are just like, I am the best, I'm so impressive, I'm just this horse, the stallion, sorry. And this is the ketamine portion of the album, because the horses are getting all of our ketamine. Where are our tax dollars going? And this song is weird. It's less like brown as the other stuff. It's more like a slightly comical version, slightly lo-fi, very lo-fi version of like early Swans, with how almost atonal the instrumental is. It's very much like an oppressive type of sound, and like this concept of the stallion. I'm reading into this too much, but this is why I enjoy the album so much. it's like this force. It's just like, it's like for Charlie here, it's like what's pressing his life down, and it's just like all these people or other stallions that are like way better than him, who's just a pony, I guess. The next song is Pollo Asado, which is literally an obnoxiously long order of Mexican food at a restaurant. Um, the prices don't even make sense. Like, this is all spoken word, and then there's a point where the customer's gonna be told he's gonna pay $22, and then he's like, wait, no, I'd like a lemonade and iced tea with that, and he's like, no, $20. But it's much smoother than how I just described it. Like, you don't even notice it first time you'll hear it, I promise. Unless you just heard what I said, because then you're definitely going to notice. Oddly enough, the instrumental underneath is just really charming, actually. It's like a pretty simple, like, rock groove going on some really interesting patterns. Not too complex, but it's a cute little song. And it also brings a theme of food into this album. You're going to see the pork roll, egg, and cheese recur a lot, as long as a special fellow named Rip Van Winkle and a few other weird concepts here. Drugs, pork roll, egg, and cheese, Rip Van Winkle, and more drugs. Next is Right to the Ways and the Rules of the World. This is the first song that probably shocked me because I didn't actually remember it that well. Ween has a real knack for faking progressive rock, and by faking it, I mean doing a perfectly serviceable job at something that's like roughly adjacent. Like, you got medieval themes, like pretty tame instrumentals that expand, interesting vocal harmonies and vocal passages. This song is like so nerdy. When I was hearing it first, I was like, this is like dungeon synth, and it's like lo-fi medieval qualities. It's like, gosh, probably 2 steps away from Wong Raven. But this weird half medieval, half prog idea never misses a beat for me. And it's actually a critique about organized religion, which, you know, it's a pretty popular thing to critique. I'm not gonna knock it for that. It's a pretty interesting idea. But this song's like an Adventure Time song, but like it's like Adventure Time the cartoon in a song. And I don't mean in an Adventure Time song, because those songs are not that good. But like when you think of like how hard some weird cute characters try and then they just like die out, like it's like the vocals on this album, like the lead vocals die several times because he's going way too high and his voice just like falls apart, and then you still got the backup vocalist continuing the song like nothing's happening or trying their best to. But this is probably the most charming track on the album so far. It's one of those songs that shows up that's just still really good, with or without the album in context. And continuing this proggy trend, we have Captain Fantasy. So Captain Fantasy is the first song on the album so far that I can say genuinely benefits from it being lo-fi. It sounds really nice, actually. I don't know exactly what it's about or implying, but it's about like taking this guy and like choosing him to be like your superhero friend because you're Captain Fantasy and you're awesome. It reminds me a lot of Dayman from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but like a more full and realized song. It's one of their more popular songs, actually. They'll probably still do it live, I think. And it's a classic. It's pretty catchy. It's a fun one. Then we're on to Demon Sweat, easily their most overdramatic song on the album. It's got these synths that remind me of Dire Dire Docks from Mario 64. And the percussion, I mean, it's just this drum machine so far, but every once in a while you'll get these random like clap hits that they're like really not syncopated. It's like a snare roll with claps. It sounds horrendous every time, but it makes me laugh out so hard. And this song probably wouldn't even be that good unless it had these claps, but the claps are so funny. It's because they're so stupid. And actually, I lied earlier. This would be good because then you get this roaring guitar solo that comes almost out of nowhere, but it's just like, whoa, this is crazy. It's really nice psych type feel. Next we get the song Molly. In my opinion, it's like if you took a Prince song and starved it and let it sleep on the street. It's industrial and insanely ugly. And it reminds me a bit of the band Suicide, like the synth pop duo, the way it's like vaguely sexual. Suicide's sexual, I know that, but like this Molly isn't that sexual, but it's like kind of sexual. It's totally drugged out, totally trippy, just super bizarre. Just in case if you forgot that this album was drugged out, the whole track here fizzles out and it's just crushed down into this really weird warped sound for like the whole ending of the song. Up next is Can You Taste the Waste? It's a really sick song, but it's like kind of an interlude because it's under 2 minutes long. You'll see that a few times on this album. And it's this jam that's just hard as nails. It's a really tame song, but like I can honestly see this being like an opener on any other album. And next we get the song Don't Sweat It, a really interesting conceptual song about death, and pretty much how you shouldn't sweat it. I like how this brings back sort of the prog-isms from previous tracks that I was mentioning before, like Captain Fantasy. But here it's still pretty sparse, and you get these super bizarre vocals over them. But it's certainly a bit of a doomer track. Next you get the song Awesome Sound. It's pretty self-explanatory. Then you get the song Laura. Anything but sweet. This is back on the Quaalude train that has been dipping in and out of the album so far. This song feels completely rotting, like it's just falling apart. It also feels harshly oppressive in a weird way. And the feelings of weakness and death on this album, as much as they've been hinted at so far, it's almost like they're peaking here for the first time. The next track is Boing. It's a song that sounds so dreary and devoid of hope, even though it's just a stupid song, which I don't even know how to describe it further than that because it's so bizarre. Then there's Mononucleosis, which is a weird song because it's actually one of the prettier tracks on the album, but it's almost like regaining hope in getting mono. Mononucleosis refers to mono if you didn't piece it together. Saving you a Google search. If you're, 13. Sounds kind of like Femme Fatale by Velvet Underground, but like way dirtier and like way more cheap and young, which is kind of an interesting way to look at it. It's like, a Femme Fatale is so like raunchy and like crazy and like such a tease, but like here it's like, I got mono from kissing the prettiest girl at school or something. I don't know. Next is the track Oh My Dear, Falling in Love. Really simple track here, really short one, but it's kind of like a pretty, like almost folkish song. It's about Gene falling in love with the woman who'd become his wife until about 2003. And honestly, you feel how pretty it is, and the guitar parts are just excellent too. Next we get the song Sketches of Winkle, which is honestly a song I don't like that much. It's very fast, very bizarre sounding, and it just talks about Rip Van Winkle the whole time. It's literally like someone with ADHD who found something to obsess over, except if it was like one name that they're just like spitting out constantly. But the ending to the song is what I like. It's just this crazy cacophony of guitar in this weird, like, just crushed up combination of just clattering guitar lines. And then we're led into more doomer territory with Alone, which actually doesn't sound that depressing compared to other songs on this album. But this one is glacially slow. And it's a painful look at isolation. It really brings up the phrase a lot. At the end of the day, we're all alone, which I can imagine is happening to Charlie at this point. I don't know what drugs he's added to this binge here, but they're certainly hitting him. And then we get Moving Away, which is surprisingly a brighter tone, I would imagine. But what comes out is like so much drearier, and it's like the protagonist maybe has been hit with depression or something like that, where like these little things will hit so much harder. And then we get the song, there's the title, and it's really off the deep end. It's like kind of concludes this bizarre concept going on, and it's sort of like a love song to this woman. And this is the most hypnotic track on the album because it's got this guy just going pork roll, egg and cheese, like over and over in the background. It sort of forms part of the instrumental, but it's a really weird, quirky love song. And up next we get the actual song Pork Roll, Egg and Cheese, and it's like after this huge hellish drug binge throughout the night, and you probably avoided death at every angle and accepted a lot of things you didn't think about accepting, and how life is pointless and meaningless ultimately. And even though you can attempt to define it yourself, that doesn't mean that your legacy will last any longer than 4 generations, and even then that's assuming if someone will ever love you. But you're up at 7 a.m. and you're like, oh, there's a pork roll, egg and cheese truck, let me go get one. and then you go get one and you take a bite out of it and you're like, this ain't so bad. That's totally like way overreading the lyrics provided here. But it references like a really cozy life. It's like mom. It mentions mom. Please pass me the pork roll, egg, and cheese, which gosh, it's like a weird nostalgic feeling that's paired with it. I never lived in New Jersey, but I'm feeling nostalgia for Charlie here. And it's like he's like, oh, I guess I should appreciate the little things. The lyrics are still abstract and make no sense. They definitely don't even relate to what I'm talking about here, but it's a feeling of real comfort from this track, one that you haven't felt in almost half the album. And then the album concludes with the Stallion Part Two, which is a little bit more of a gentle version of the Stallion Part One, with some different lyrics, much less harsh and braggadocious lyrics. It sort of brings the theme all together that, like, pork roll, egg, and cheese, you're on this crazy high, and it's like, I don't know, like getting a parking ticket for like $10 or something like that, and you're like, oh, well, I guess, I'll take what I can get. It's very much a song it's technically the same themes as the beginning of the album, but it's in a much softer way, and it's almost like concluding to the listener. It's like, life does suck, You can't really avoid pain entirely. You can suffer a lot or you can suffer a little. Ultimately, half of that is a choice, unless your hormones are jacked up. But you can enjoy things. You can try and sustain them best you can. It's really all a matter of perspective. Yeah, I'm reading in this a lot, but if you can't tell, I really like this album. It's super brown and lo-fi and gritty. So many cool ideas are on here. This album sucks, but at the same time, it's amazing. I'm giving this a based and red pilled. I'm not even joking. It's just so out there and weird. Don't listen to this tired. You won't enjoy it as much as when you're awake, because then you really get the experience in. It's not one of those. Actually, I think nothing sounds as good when you're tired. But this one's real special to me. I didn't even mention this part, by the way. That album cover, you probably think it's super weird. Most of that is another album cover, Leonard Cohen Greatest Hits. They just switched it with a member of Ween. I think they're bassist at the time. But yeah, that's about it. Please listen to this album. How's your holidays? How's the December content I posted for you? How you doing? Go ahead and comment down below. A like and subscribe would be appreciated a lot. Hope you enjoyed my worst video ever. That's about it. Please subscribe. Comments, questions, concerns down below. Social media in the description, including my Discord server. Come join. That's about it. Have a good one. Bye.